The spray was from here all the way.
And where's Kelsey? No one knows where Kelsey is.
Covered a number of items that make us suspicious that the crime did occur.
On Thanksgiving morning in 2018, Cheryl dialed her 29-year-old daughter, Kelsey, a routine call that began like any other between the two. Although Kelsey had moved from Washington State to Woodland Park, Colorado, years earlier, the distance hadn't eroded their bond. They still spoke every few days, remaining close despite the miles between them. On this particular call, they exchanged holiday greetings and small talk. Kelsey mentioned her fiancé, Patrick Frazee, wasn't feeling well, and she planned to pick up groceries to prepare his favorite Thanksgiving dish, sweet potato casserole. Cheryl had no idea this casual conversation would be her last with Kelsey. Days passed, and when Cheryl's repeated calls went unanswered, concern took over. She couldn't know that by then, Kelsey Berreth had already disappeared, and no one had seen or heard from her since that fateful Thanksgiving day. Surveillance footage captured Kelsey entering a grocery store with her 1-year-old daughter to buy ingredients for the casserole, but chillingly, security cameras from her home showed her entering, never to emerge again. Days later, police visited Kelsey's home. Initially, they found nothing out of the ordinary, but a second visit with forensic teams revealed a horrifying scene. Bloodstains invisible to the naked eye were discovered seeping into the floorboards, splattered across the walls, and covering furniture and appliances. It was now undeniable. Kelsey had been brutally murdered, her blood hidden beneath a clean facade. The question was, who did it and why? Kelsey Berreth's story begins long before that tragic day. Born on September 15, 1989, to Cheryl and Daryl Berreth, she was raised alongside her brother Clint on a quiet farm. Life on the farm meant little to do, but it brought the siblings closer. Those who knew Kelsey described her as shy, gentle, and kind, loyal, and intelligent, with a deep passion for aviation, a dream that took flight when she was young. After high school, she attended a flight school in Washington and earned her pilot's license, fueling her love for flying. Kelsey's 20s were a blend of ambition and uncertainty, and in 2016, at the age of 27, she turned to an online dating app in search of companionship. That's when she met Patrick Frazee. Patrick, a few years older, caught her attention immediately. Tall, rugged, with hazel eyes and a background in farming, he seemed like the perfect match for Kelsey, who also came from a farm. Despite the distance, Patrick lived in Colorado. They began talking, and soon a relationship blossomed. By May 2016, Kelsey made the bold decision to leave Washington behind and move to Colorado to be closer to him. What seemed like a hopeful new chapter quickly soured. Upon arriving, Kelsey stayed with Patrick at the home he shared with his mother, only to be insulted by her future mother-in-law. She moved into her own place, securing a job as a flight instructor in Pueblo, and for a while, everything seemed to be falling into place. Her relationship with Patrick continued, and soon she discovered she was pregnant. In October 2017, Kelsey gave birth to their daughter, Kaylee, and shortly after, the couple became engaged. Yet even with these milestones, Kelsey and Patrick didn't live together. Patrick preferred his ranch life, while Kelsey was content in her townhome, balancing her career, motherhood, and a fiancé who was increasingly distant. As time passed, the cracks in their relationship deepened. Friends noticed Patrick's cold and emotionally abusive behavior toward Kelsey. He often blew up at her over trivial matters, once erupting in anger when she struggled to help with cattle on his ranch. Friends like Joseph Moore witnessed Patrick's harsh treatment firsthand, recalling how he would scream and berate her. Patrick Frazee wasn't the loving partner Kelsey Berreth believed him to be, and the people around them knew it. What Kelsey never realized was that Patrick had been spreading lies about her behind her back for some time. He told acquaintances that she was an alcoholic, unable to care for their daughter Kaylee, and accused her of being unstable, going so far as to fabricate stories about her intentionally harming their child. These accusations were carefully aimed at those who didn't know Kelsey well, making it easier for them to believe his malicious claims. But for those who truly knew her, there was no doubt Kelsey was a doting mother who would never harm her daughter. On the contrary, Kelsey was known to be dedicated to Kaylee, her world revolving around her child's happiness. Her co-workers at Doss Aviation vouched for her character, and none of them ever saw signs of excessive drinking or instability. Patrick's lies, it seemed, were entirely unfounded. So why was he doing this? Was it simply because he was a cruel person, or was there something more sinister at play? In the months leading up to Thanksgiving 2018, Kelsey had started to confide in her colleagues that Patrick was mistreating her. Despite their rocky relationship, she was determined to make it work for Kaylee's sake. She still loved him, and even as her parents visited Colorado for Kaylee's first birthday just a month before, they saw no signs of trouble. The family celebrated together, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. They had no reason to worry. They planned to meet again for Christmas. On Thanksgiving morning, everything seemed normal. Kelsey and Patrick agreed to meet at her townhome later in the day. Patrick had been complaining of stomach issues, and Kelsey, ever the caring partner, offered to pick up some medicine for him while she gathered ingredients for his favorite dish, sweet potato casserole. Shortly after, she made her final phone call to her mother, Cheryl, a conversation as ordinary as any other, filled with talk of Thanksgiving and the upcoming Christmas gifts Kelsey had been buying. Nothing seemed out of place, but when Kelsey said goodbye to her mom that day, no one knew it would be their last conversation. At 12:05 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Kelsey and Kaylee entering a Safeway grocery store, strolling through the aisles as they gathered the ingredients for their Thanksgiving meal. About an hour later, Kelsey and Patrick were seen on a neighbor's security footage, walking into Kelsey's townhome. Kelsey carried a poinsettia, while Patrick had Kaylee in her car seat. They both entered the house, and Kelsey was never seen again. 2 days later, Cheryl began to worry when her calls to Kelsey went unanswered. Eventually, she received a text from her daughter saying she would call back, but the call never came. As the days stretched on and Kelsey's phone went straight to voicemail, Cheryl's concern turned to panic. She reached out to Patrick, but his response was odd. He claimed Kelsey had broken up with him, saying she needed space and had left Kaylee with him. According to Patrick, she planned to move away, but hadn't told him where. Cheryl was stunned. Kelsey hadn't mentioned anything about leaving Patrick during their last conversation. It didn't make sense that she would suddenly leave town without telling her family, let alone abandon Kaylee. Cheryl asked Patrick to check on Kelsey at her townhome, but even as she hung up the phone, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Something was terribly wrong. Acting on instinct, she called the Woodland Park Police to report Kelsey missing. Later that day, officers visited Kelsey's home but found nothing amiss, no sign of a struggle or foul play. Patrick, meanwhile, told them that Kelsey had ended their relationship the day before Thanksgiving, a story that didn't align with anything Cheryl knew. Kelsey's behavior on Thanksgiving, her excitement for the holiday and future plans, didn't fit with someone who had just broken up with her fiancé. Patrick continued spinning his web of lies, portraying Kelsey as a troubled woman who had abandoned her life and child. He handed over her belongings to the police, her purse, keys, and even her gun, claiming he had taken it away because of her alleged depression. He wanted them to believe that Kelsey was unstable, perhaps even suicidal, but there was no evidence to support his story. In fact, Kelsey's search history that she had been looking up remedies for stomach ulcers, clearly still concerned about Patrick's health, which contradicted his claims of a recent breakup. Further investigation revealed text messages between Patrick and Kelsey from 2 days after Thanksgiving, where she seemed to be communicating normally, mentioning mundane things like taking a shower and calling him later. It didn't look like the behavior of someone running away. The day after Kelsey Berreth's last known appearance, her phone record showed an unusual text to her boss, Ray. She apologized for the late notice, explaining that she needed to visit her sick grandmother and wouldn't be able to come into work that week. Ray found this strange. Kelsey had never been one to miss work unexpectedly. Even more alarming was the fact that after this text, her phone began to travel away from Colorado, with records showing multiple calls between her and Patrick Frazee during that weekend. They spoke 19 times, and in the final message Kelsey sent to Patrick, she asked him a chilling question: "Do you even love me?" Then her phone went dark, untraceable. Oddly, while Kelsey's phone was pinging off cell towers in Idaho, Patrick's phone showed he was still at his ranch in Colorado, raising questions about what had really happened. Despite the evidence suggesting Kelsey might have simply left, her mother, Cheryl, knew something far more sinister was at play. The very next day, Cheryl and Kelsey's brother, Clint, booked a flight to Colorado, hoping to find answers. In Woodland Park, the entire community was already mobilizing to search for Kelsey. Concern was growing fast. It wasn't like her to vanish without a trace. The police held a press conference, but noticeably absent was Patrick, Kelsey's fiancé. This only deepened the suspicions surrounding him. When Cheryl and Clint arrived at Kelsey's townhome, they were immediately struck by how wrong everything felt. Patrick's claim that Kelsey had left didn't make sense. All of her belongings were still in the house. Her clothes in the closet, her toothbrush in the bathroom, even her suitcase remained unpacked. If Kelsey had truly left, why had she taken nothing with her? The small details were unnerving. Cinnamon rolls sat on the stove, rock hard from neglect. A plug-in candle was still on, stale bread lay abandoned on the counter, and flowers were wilting in a vase. Everything seemed hastily cleaned, yet unnaturally still. Cheryl noticed white marks on the kitchen appliance, signs of a recent scrub down, but the most disturbing came when Clint spotted something small but significant: blood on the base of the toilet. In that moment, their worst fears were confirmed. Something terrible had happened to Kelsey. They quickly contacted the police. Crime scene investigators arrived and used Blue Star forensic blood reagent to detect any traces of blood that had been cleaned up. The results were horrifying. In the living room, a large pool of glowing blue indicated a significant amount of blood had once covered the floor. Blood spatter was revealed on the walls, in the bathroom, and across the kitchen appliances. It became painfully clear that someone had been killed in this house, and the killer had meticulously attempted to cover their tracks. DNA tests confirmed the worst. Kelsey Berreth had been murdered in her own home. Despite this grim discovery, Patrick Frazee remained distant. He didn't attend the candlelight vigil held in Kelsey's honor, nor did he post about her disappearance on social media or offer any help in searching for her. Investigators quickly realized that Patrick's story had holes. Security footage from the neighbors' cameras revealed Patrick leaving Kelsey's alone on Thanksgiving Day, contradicting his earlier claims. Phone records further complicated things. While Patrick was supposedly at his ranch, Kelsey's phone was in Idaho. Clearly, he hadn't acted alone. As the investigation deepened, police uncovered Patrick's connection to a woman named Crystal Lee. She lived in Idaho, and records showed that she and Patrick had been in contact multiple times over the Thanksgiving weekend. When Idaho FBI agents confronted Crystal, she initially played dumb, denying any knowledge of Patrick or Kelsey. But the investigators had phone records proving otherwise. Faced with this evidence, Crystal made a deal. In exchange for a lighter sentence, she confessed to everything. Crystal Lee and Patrick Frazee had a long, twisted history. They had met shortly after high school and had been involved in an on-again, off-again relationship for years. Crystal, a self-described horse girl, was drawn to Patrick's rugged country boy lifestyle, but their relationship was tumultuous, often marked by Patrick's emotional abuse. At one point, he even threatened to kill her animals if she didn't do what he wanted. Despite this, the two maintained an illicit affair for years, even after Crystal married someone else. In 2015, when Crystal's marriage hit a rough patch, she rekindled her relationship with Patrick. She became pregnant with his child, but chose to have an abortion, a decision that upset Patrick deeply. When Patrick met Kelsey, his relationship with Crystal cooled. The two never completely severed ties. By late teen, after Kelsey gave birth to their daughter, Patrick reconnected with Crystal, and it wasn't long before he started speaking to her about Kelsey in a disturbing way. Patrick painted Kelsey as a horrible mother, an alcoholic, mentally unstable, and abusive toward their daughter. Crystal admitted that Patrick had been talking about getting rid of Kelsey for months, gradually manipulating her into believing it was the best thing for everyone involved, especially their child. The reality, though, was much darker. Crystal revealed to investigators that Patrick had tried to kill Kelsey on multiple occasions before Thanksgiving. The first attempt involved a poisoned coffee. In October 2018, Patrick asked Crystal how much Ambien and Valium it would take to kill someone. Kelsey's favorite drink was a caramel from Starbucks, and Patrick's plan was for Crystal to lace it with a lethal dose of the drugs. Crystal shockingly agreed. She drove 12 hours from Idaho to Colorado, bought the coffee, and went to Kelsey's home. When Kelsey answered the door, Crystal pretended to be a new neighbor offering the drink as a thank you for helping with her dogs. Kelsey, confused but polite, took the coffee. Crystal claimed she didn't actually poison it, but investigators would never be certain. What they did know was that the attempt had failed, and Patrick's chilling determination to get rid of her only grew stronger. Despite her internal conflict, Kelsey hadn't seemed like the monster Patrick had described. Crystal's love for him blinded her to the gravity of what was unfolding. Shortly after the failed poisoning attempt, Patrick Frazee and Crystal Lee concocted a more violent plan. This time, Patrick handed Crystal a metal pipe and instructed her to wait outside Kelsey's home and ambush her. He emphasized that she needed to make sure there wasn't much blood and that no one saw her. Crystal took the pipe and drove to Kelsey's townhome, but as she sat there, watching Kelsey go about her day, she couldn't go through with it. Kelsey didn't match the monstrous image Patrick had painted of her. Crystal left without making a move, and when Patrick called her the next day to ask how it went, she lied, saying there were too many people around. His frustration grew. It didn't stop him from trying again. This time, he handed Crystal a metal bat and told her to use it on Kelsey, then dispose of the body in Idaho. Crystal, torn between her love for Patrick and the enormity of what he was asking, couldn't bring herself to do it. Unable to carry out the murder herself, Crystal confided in her friend Michelle Stein, tearfully revealing that Patrick wanted her to take care of his baby mama. Michelle was horrified and encouraged Crystal to refuse. Kelsey had started to sense that her relationship with Patrick was unraveling and made it clear that if they broke up, she would fight for custody of their daughter, Kaylee. This only increased Patrick's desperation. He didn't want a drawn-out legal battle, and after the failed attempts, he decided to take matters into his own hands. On Thanksgiving Day, he told Crystal to come to Colorado, saying she had a mess to clean up. Kelsey was dead. Crystal, under Patrick's manipulation and still unable to break free from him, gathered cleaning supplies, bleach, trash bags, shoe coverings, and even a makeshift hazmat suit. These were not the actions of an innocent bystander. She knew exactly what she was going to do when she arrived at Kelsey's townhome early the next morning. The scene inside was nothing short of a nightmare. Blood was everywhere, pooled on the living room floor, spattered across the walls, soaked into the carpets. Patrick's bloody footprints marked his path through the house. Crystal put on her protective gear and began scrubbing the house. Hours later, she found herself on her hands and knees, wiping up dried blood and throwing blood-soaked towels into trash bags. At Patrick's request, she even searched for and found one of Kelsey's teeth, which had been knocked out during the brutal murder, and disposed of it along with the rest of the evidence. As she finished cleaning, Crystal loaded 6 large trash bags into her car and drove to Patrick's ranch, where they disposed of the evidence, including Kelsey's body. While Crystal helped clean up the crime scene, Patrick maintained an eerie calm. On Thanksgiving Day, just after killing Kelsey, Patrick went to an ATM to withdraw money. Surveillance footage captured a large black tote in the back of his truck, inside which was Kelsey's body. A little over an hour later, Patrick and Kelsey were seen entering her home together, but only Patrick and their daughter Kaylee emerged 2 hours later. It was during this time that Kelsey was murdered. Crystal provided investigators with a detailed account of the murder. Kelsey had no idea what was coming as she prepared to spend Thanksgiving with Patrick. She picked up groceries to make his favorite meal, sweet potato casserole, and bought him medication for his stomach problems. They went inside her home, and after putting their daughter down for a nap, Patrick suggested playing a game. Kelsey, hoping for a rare moment of connection with her increasingly distant fiancé, agreed. Patrick blindfolded her with a sweater and told her to guess the scents of some candles. Unaware of the true danger, Kelsey smiled, playfully guessing the first scent, vanilla. But when it came time for the second candle, Patrick reached for the metal bat hidden in his sweater instead. The first blow sent Kelsey reeling, blood quickly soaking through the blindfold. As she staggered, trying to crawl away, Patrick delivered another crushing blow. She managed to plead, "Please stop," but Patrick, driven by a cold, detached rage, continued to beat her mercilessly. Blood splattered across the room, on the walls, the furniture, even Kaylee's toys. With each swing of the bat, Patrick ensured that Kelsey would never get up again. One of her teeth flew across the room as he struck her repeatedly. By the time he finished, Kelsey lay lifeless on the floor, surrounded by blood. Patrick then placed her body into the large black tote and cleaned himself up. He gathered his daughter, Kaylee, and left the house, walking out as if nothing had happened. He called Crystal to tell her to come clean the mess he had made. Meanwhile, he went back to his ranch and sat down to Thanksgiving dinner with his family. They later recalled that he was unusually late and seemed nervous, but no one knew the real reason. Kelsey's body was sitting outside in the back of his truck, just yards away from where they were eating. After Thanksgiving, Patrick stored Kelsey's body in his barn, placing the tote on a stack of hay bales, awaiting the next step. A few days later, Crystal arrived to clean the crime scene, meticulously scrubbing every trace of blood. Patrick had instructed her to make it look like Kelsey had left willingly, and Crystal, blinded by her misguided loyalty to him, did her best to follow through. After 4 grueling hours cleaning Kelsey's blood-soaked townhome, Crystal Lee stopped for a quick meal at Sonic before heading to Patrick Frazie's ranch, where the final, unthinkable steps of their plan unfolded. Together, they hauled the black tote containing Kelsey's battered body to a burn pit on the ranch. As Patrick lifted the lid, revealing Kelsey's lifeless form, he drenched her in gasoline. Crystal, fully complicit now, even helped gather firewood to fuel the blaze. With a flick of a match, Patrick ignited the fire, sending flames roaring through the night, and the smell of burning flesh filled the air. Over the next several hours, Kelsey's body was reduced to ash, and Crystal, in her role as Patrick's willing accomplice, tossed the 6 trash bags of bloody towels, clothes, and cleaning supplies into the fire, erasing every trace of the brutal crime. Despite their efforts to destroy the evidence, neither Patrick nor Crystal were as clever as they thought. They hadn't accounted for the relentless pursuit of investigators. After the body burned through the night, the pair concocted a plan to make it look like Kelsey had fled Colorado. Patrick handed Crystal Kelsey's phone, car keys, and gun, instructing her to drive far away and use the phone to impersonate Kelsey. Crystal did as she was told, sending messages to Kelsey's boss and even texting Patrick as if she were Kelsey. The last message, chilling in its context, read, "Do you even love me?" before Crystal disposed of Kelsey's belongings in a canyon. But phone records, secret calls, and the mounting evidence they left behind would soon unravel their plans. Between November 25th and December 4th, Patrick and Crystal contacted each other 46 times. Crystal's eventual confession, lasting over 4.5 hours, was the linchpin in the case against Patrick. In a detailed walkthrough with investigators, she led them through Kelsey's home, pointing out the blood she had tried to clean. She showed them where blood spatter had reached nearly 10 feet high on the walls, and where she had missed spots, intentionally leaving traces behind. Her confession continued as they toured Patrick's ranch, where she pointed out the burn pit. There, investigators found the remains of melted plastic and the faint outline of where the tote had rested. More disturbingly, they uncovered human tooth fragments amidst the scorched earth, just as Crystal had described. Cadaver dogs confirmed the presence of human decomposition where Kelsey's body had been stored. As the evidence against Patrick piled up, his calm facade began to crack. Surveillance footage showed him buying gas containers shortly before the burn, and burn marks in the grass further corroborated Crystal's testimony. Investigators now had enough to arrest him for Kelsey's murder. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, Patrick tried to wriggle out of his fate, going so far as to plot the murder of key witnesses, including Crystal and Kelsey's mother, Cheryl. He asked a fellow inmate to carry out the hits, providing names and detailed instructions on how to eliminate them. However, the inmate handed the notes over to detectives who used them to cement their case against Patrick. The trial which began on November 1st, 2019, saw Patrick charged with first-degree murder, solicitation to commit murder, and tampering with a deceased human body. The prosecution painted him as a cold, calculating manipulator who planned Kelsey's murder for months. Witnesses came forward recalling Patrick's disturbing statements, like how no body, no crime was his strategy. Although the defense tried to shift the blame onto Crystal, claiming she had orchestrated the murder, the overwhelming physical evidence and Crystal's damning testimony were impossible to refute. Despite Crystal's role in the crime, her cooperation earned her a plea deal that spared her from murder charges. She only served 3 years for evidence tampering and was paroled in January 2020, a fact that enraged many following the case. Patrick Frazee, on the other hand, was convicted and sentenced to life in prison plus 156 years. At his sentencing, Kelsey's mother, Cheryl, shared a heart-wrenching statement reminding Patrick that one day his daughter Kaylee would learn the truth about how her mother died and who was responsible. Cheryl and Kelsey's family had fought tirelessly for justice, and now they had full custody of Kaylee, ensuring she would grow up surrounded by love, knowing how much her mother had cared for her. Thanks for watching. If you love unraveling dark mysteries, subscribe to Secret Sleuths and hit the bell for more gripping cases. Stay tuned.